Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul, joined by Jack Weinberger, Robert Ziggy Ziegler at the University of Virginia, and producer Zach Bloomquist, the best executive producer in the game, is with us, a full cast and crew. Today, we're doing NFC North draft targets. We're going to run through each team. We've got some requests lately, particularly from Lions fans, from Bears fans, saying, hey, you guys are supposed to do a lot of NFC North, but you never talk about us. And I saw that. We said, all right, you know what? That's on us. We're going to get the Bears and the Lions in there today. We're going to talk about all four of these NFC North teams and the biggest needs and the biggest players that are being targeted by them right now. If you've been enjoying the content from this channel, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribing is the best thing that you can do for us, other than telling a friend to listen to the show and trying to spread the word. We're trying to grow up upwards of 20,000 subscribers by the time the regular season starts, which I think is a doable goal. Would you say, Jack?
100%.
It's reasonable, right?
100%. What was that? Do about 2K more? What were we?
Yeah, a little bit less than 2K more to get over 20,000. And I saw, what was it, Midwest Mountain Man, one of our regular listeners, said we're what, like 100,000 something members away from being able to buy an NFL team or whatever it was. I can't remember what the number was. Probably way more than that. Probably a million.
Brick by brick.
A million members away. But yeah, brick by brick, we'll get there. And if we're able to buy an NFL team, man, we're going to have some fun. And we'll have a lot of fun. A lot of polls to the community page saying, who should we draft? Who should our starting quarterback be? So when we get there, we'll have fun. Ziggy, how's everything going down at UVA? Any wild storms lately? I know whenever we get updates from you, it sounds like something crazy is happening at the University of Virginia.
Talk to me after this weekend. Things will be back to normal here.
It's still crazy.
There's a big ancient philosophy conference happening, and I'm the person in charge of organizing it. So
really, ancient philosophy. You're running an ancient philosophy conference.
You sound surprised.
I am a little surprised.
What is ancient philosophy? Like old time philosophy?
Isn't all philosophy?
This conference is basically all Plato and Aristotle.
Two of my favorites.
I tried to get a Plotinus paper in, but
when you say you're running it, does that mean you're scheduling speakers? What's?
Yeah, I was part of the program committee. I'm in charge of getting food. I'm in charge of getting everyone around where they need to go.
What's the food?
I can do that because I'm not giving a talk because I don't work on ancient philosophy much.
What's the catering?
We've got Roots Natural Kitchen for Friday night dinner. We got Botanical Fare for lunch on Saturday.
What kind of food is this?
What do you mean? What do you want from me, Paul?
I want to know what kind of food you're
Why
catering.
are you so interested in the menu?
Like chicken, steak.
Most philosophers don't eat meat.
So what are you getting? So what's the food? Is it veggies?
Figures. You guys don't
Fish?
even know.
What about fish? Like is fish
Don't even
meat?
know.
It's tofu.
Tofu?
Miso soup?
Are you doing like veggie wraps? What's beans?
You guys have
Is
no
it beans?
clue.
You love
guys have
beans.
no clue.
Corn. Anything.
All right,
Ziggy,
Ziggy won't tell us.
How lost would I be at this ancient philosophy gathering?
Jack, I'm going to be lost at this conference.
Oh, so
you would know.
I would just be like,
You'd probably be speaking.
Jack, I think for $1,000 you could not sit through this conference.
how long is it?
It's 3 hours on Friday and 14 hours on Saturday.
I'll need more than $1,000.
14
Yeah, I'll need more than $1,000 for
From
that.
start to finish, including the dinner at the end, it's 14 hours.
Maybe something would just click for you though that you didn't know was there. Like you'd be listening, you'd be like, wait a second.
No, if you don't know Greek, this conference is not for you.
Oh, can you
I'd
speak
have
Greek?
to get super drunk.
Can you speak Greek? Or maybe when you're drunk, you
No,
might be able to.
No, it's not about speaking, Paul. It's about reading.
Oh, can you read in
You guys
Greek?
are-
I can
guys
probably
are
read
hopeless.
Greek.
All right. Well, why don't we go to something that we understand, and we'll dive into the NFC North.
I've seen A Big Fat Greek Wedding. It's a good movie.
That's a good movie. The biggest team needs in the NFC North. Here's how it's going to work. Each of us is going to take one team. I'll take two because producer Zach, you can't throw these over to producer Zach. The show could go to hell. So I'll take two, and we're going to run through the biggest team needs. Each person will then give a couple draft targets, highlighting perhaps their favorite, and then the other two will chime in whether or not they agree and some other players. So we'll do about 10 minutes maybe or so around that on each team. We'll start with Jack and the Chicago Bears.
Lions and Tigers and Bears. Oh my. Lions and Tigers and Bears and Vikings and Packers. Oh my. All right, the monsters of the Midway. So I was doing a little deep dive Chicago Bears research these last couple of days because you assigned me the Bears a couple of days ago.
Yes.
And we know the main needs of this squad. The offensive line, protect your quarterback. They've done a good job of boosting that up.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking Ashton Genty because Ben Johnson, we've seen him before in Detroit with the two running back look. It can't hurt in today's NFL. Take some weight off DeAndre Swift's shoulders. Most backs I feel like are committees now. But I'm going with the other side of the ball on defense, because this defensive line, in terms of getting to a quarterback, also struggled a bit last year too. You bring in there's Montez Sweat, and I think he needs a running mate. So I'm going to go with the B set of Texas A&M and say the Bears are going to take Shamar Stewart and pair him up along Montez Sweat. I mean, this guy is a freak athlete, has all the traits. He's strong, athletic, and the build to be a very good defensive player in the pros for a long time. Might be a bit of a reach. I think the Bears have done a good job on offense, building around Caleb, helping to protect him, and now on defense in terms of getting to the other quarterback. I like Shamar Stewart.
So Jack,
he's a midway monster.
Can you help me out here for a second? So Shamar Stewart's supposed to be the freak that's going to come and help the Bears defense, right?
He's a midway monster.
He played 31 games in college. Do you know how many sacks he had in 31 games in college, starting every single one of those 31 games? Total. We're talking total number of sacks.
So let me hear it.
4.5. That's not 4.5 a season. That's 1.5 a season.
He looks pretty good to me. Ziggy.
How many tackles for loss did he have over his entire career? This guy is supposed to be an elite run stopper and a guy that can get after the quarterback. 12.
All right. Well,
this guy produced absolutely Packers fans who are sitting back here. They've heard this story before. This defensive lineman who's an athletic freak. He's got all the traits in the world, but did absolutely nothing in college. He's going to be the guy to transfer.
Yeah, when you're the only guy.
Why is Shamar Stewart different?
When you're being blocked by 4 people on the O-line, you have no one else around you. Now pair him up with
they skirt. Nick skirt.
And now you pair him up with Montez Sweat. It's a different story. Shamar Stewart's the guy to stop on Texas A&M.
I think that Shamar Stewart, the Bears need edge rushing help for sure. I agree with you as that being one of the needs. I think Shamar Stewart would be a reach there to me. He's again, that's what everyone says, the physical specimen part, and I agree. I'm cool with drafting physical specimens on the D line. I think I said on our last show, Daniil Hunter, when the Vikings drafted him, that was awesome because he was someone that you could hand over to the defense and to the coordinator and say, mold him how you want. And those guys sometimes turn into freaks. But that was a 3rd round pick. That wasn't at pick 10. And the more I'm listening about what's going on in Chicago and hearing Ben Johnson talk and just reading different media people, I think it's going to be on the offensive side of the ball. And this is a good draft to do that too, because we've talked about the depth along the defensive line in this draft class. You'll be able to build up there. I think it's going to be one of 3 dudes. It's going to be Genty, it's going to be Will Campbell, or it's going to be Tyler Warren. Those are the 3 names that I think are in play for the Chicago Bears. I think Shamar Stewart is like a fun prospect, but I'd be really surprised if it wasn't one of those 3.
Genty seems to be the favorite.
If he makes it there.
If he makes it there, yeah. I've seen a lot of people who's on the board at 10 saying the Bears will take Genty.
Well, you must. I mean, you're anti-running back.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have a defensive specimen than a running back.
Ziggy, what do you think of those names that I threw out there between Genty, Campbell, and Warren? Do you like that philosophy that I'm going with?
I really don't like Tyler Warren as a pick. The first tight end taken in a draft, really tight ends taken in a 1st round, are basically always terrible. If you go back the past, say, decade and a half in the NFL draft, we're going to set, last year was obviously an exception. Nobody's saying the Raiders made the wrong pick there. But besides him, no tight end taken in the 1st round has made a single All-Pro team.
Yeah, but the guy
Only one of them even got a 2nd contract of the team that drafted him.
Heath Miller.
David Njoku.
Njoku's been solid lately.
Njoku's been solid, but are you telling me David Njoku is worth a 1st round pick?
No.
Brock Bowers is what you want him to be, but so many other tight ends taken in the 1st round have just not been it.
Did you hear?
I don't buy it.
Ben Johnson talking about Tyler Warren. So for Bears fans who are, depends on how you feel about Tyler Warren. Ben Johnson said recently that the Bears front office or all their coaches sat down and reviewed over the top 30 players they were watching tape. And that when Warren came on, Dennis Allen, their defensive coordinator, stood up and said, this guy would be a nightmare. to scheme against. He said he'd be an absolute nightmare. You put him in Wildcat. He's a great pass catcher. He blocks like a monster. Tyler Warren's going to be a top 10 pick. That's going to happen, I believe.
I think he's better than the Brock Bowers was. This guy's an
Warren?
animal. Yeah. I remember last year what I said about what's his name?
Dalton Kincaid.
About Dalton Kincaid. How this guy seems to be always so wide open and he's just amazing. Tyler Warren's the new Dalton Kincaid. Tyler Warren's Dalton Kincaid on steroids.
Okay, so Ziggy doesn't like Tyler Warren. As far as Ashton Genty goes here, again, Johnson talking about him, he said they were mentioning, Jahmyr Gibbs being a recent pick from a Ben Johnson team to go into the Lions. And Jack, you mentioned a lot of running backs by committee now. Well, that's what the Lions did with Ben Johnson, having Gibbs and David Montgomery. So you have DeAndre Swift right now. What Johnson said he'd be looking for and the way that they evaluated Gibbs was not just as a running back, but really looking at the guy as a weapon.
I don't know what that means.
What do you mean?
Weapon is not a position in football.
I think I know exactly what it means.
Like Debo's a weapon, right?
We'll think of Jahmyr Gibbs.
Debo's a wide receiver who can play running back. Weapon is not a position.
No, a weapon is someone who can make plays with the ball in their hands. Who's explosive.
Here's what you're saying. Jahmyr Gibbs is a good running back.
He's an explosive player who could catch out of the backfield. He can make guys miss yards after the catch there. I think that's what you're looking for when you have a weapon. And Ashton Genty, from everything you see and read about him, it looks like he will be a very good weapon in the NFL. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for someone who can make things happen on the field. I want those guys on the field. The words that Ben Johnson used were someone who could strike fear into an opposing defense. That's a weapon. And if you think Ashton Genty can do that, then at 10, I don't think it's a horrible move to have more playmakers and guys who can score as soon as they touch the ball.
The pick makes sense. And like what we've seen out of the Lions of Ben Johnson recently too, with Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, he likes to do that.
It's just a matter of whether or not he'll be there at 10.
Yeah.
A lot of rumors are the Raiders right now, but I think the Raiders are going to go defense. I'd be surprised if they took Genty.
I really don't think he makes sense on the Raiders.
No, neither do I. But so Ziggy, if you were there at 10 then as the Bears, you don't like Tyler Warren, you don't like Genty, it sounds like.
I think Genty's not the pick at 10.
Isn't there a big lineman?
Do you have a pick? Is it Campbell?
I'm taking Campbell or I'm taking a guy on the lines.
Or Membu? One of those dudes.
I'm taking Campbell or I'm taking a guy on the lines. It's that simple.
It makes sense too. I mean you have the new revamped offensive line, but you do have guys like Joe Tooney's getting older. Jonah Jackson's coming off injury. You have Braxton Jones, I believe, is going into the last year of his his contract right now. Yeah, so it's like it wouldn't be bad to continue to build along that offensive line for Chicago. But I think that there are a lot of options that the Bears have at 10 here to get an elite player, and I think they're in a great position in this draft. Like it's really cool. Really, throughout the whole NFC North, you're seeing all these teams are pretty complete. And they can use upgrades at certain positions. Every team can. But there's no glaring needs, really, for most of these teams where you're saying, we need to take that or else we're in a ton of trouble heading into the year. And that's an unbelievable position to be in, especially for 4 teams in one division. So there you go, the Chicago Bears. Jack's going with Shamar Stewart. Ziggy and I don't necessarily agree with that. I threw out Will Campbell, Ashton Genty, and Tyler Warren. I don't know. By the way, did you guys see with Will Campbell? The whole concern about Will Campbell is his arm length and whether or not he'll be able to play at tackle. Ziggy, you look like you're about to jump when I said that.
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Well, it's funny. He measured in at like 32 5/8 was his arm length. I don't realize how important like the arm length is to people.
Well,
I mean, I know it's important.
It's not actually. It doesn't correlate with NFL success.
32
arm length
what?
Doesn't do that. It's a myth.
32
I mean,
what?
teams draft based on this, like they draft on 40 times, but who cares?
Arm length at 33 seems to be the magic number here for
inches?
tackles. 33 inches for arm length. And
I'll show you what else would be.
Will Campbell, yeah, 32. Will Campbell measured in at 32 5/8, and then at his pro day measured in at 33. So he wound up hitting the mark, and then so we'll see if people wind up freaking out over that and having him slide. Maybe he's better positioned to be a guard in the NFL. I just say watch the tape and see what happens.
Ziggy, You know what else is 32 and 3/4 inches?
What, Jack?
I'll say it off air.
Oh, jeez. All right, so there's the Chicago Bears. Now I'll take things over to my Minnesota Vikings here. Ziggy and I's Minnesota Vikings. The needs for Minnesota, again, another team that has most of the positions filled that we need. I think our biggest need heading into the season is at cornerback. Byron Murphy feels like the only proven thing that we have, but we have Isaiah Rodgers, right? That was a good signing. We have a few pieces in that secondary. Mekhi Blackman's coming back after missing all of last season. So the Vikings at cornerback feels like there's talent in the room, but that they can certainly use an upgrade, or at least another reliable piece. They need a safety after Cam Bynum left, and they could probably use some more help along the offensive and interior defensive line, despite the big signings this offseason. Nice to have some depth there as they're having aging players come in at the position through free agency. So when I look at draft day targets, would you agree, Ziggy, as a fellow Viking fan, cornerback is the biggest need?
I think cornerback is likely the biggest need, though I'd like to improve on the interior line on both the offense and the defense too. Mm-hmm. I know we made some additions. I'd still like to get better there, but I think those are clearly the top three needs.
Okay. Yeah. And safety, you're not too worried about safety?
You can get playable safeties in the NFL. I mean, I'd like to have better safeties, but I don't think that's as critical a position for us to get right.
So as far as like dreaming, I wanting to go cornerback here, I would love for Will Johnson, the Michigan cornerback, to fall. Ziggy made fun of me when I said that before the show. He's like, okay, yeah, you want a top 10 prospect.
I really hope that the Minnesota Vikings can pick up Abdul Carter at the end of the first round.
Stop it. I don't think Will Johnson in a lot of drafts has fallen to the late teens, maybe even early 20s.
You never know. There could be like a Laramie Tunsil incident. Maybe Abdul Carter will post something.
Maybe he'll say something wrong.
The Laramie Tunsil incident was the greatest thing to ever happen to the Dolphins.
So I'm hoping Will Johnson, we need something to leak from Will Johnson's Twitter for when he was like 16 years old. But Will Johnson out of Michigan would be someone that I'd love the Vikings to have a shot at. The big question around him is his 40 time. And to me, this is a great example. He hasn't run a 40-yard dash. He's been hurt and he refuses to run. So I look at the tape on Will Johnson. I see a big athletic cornerback who shuts people down. I think he'd be awesome for Brian Flores to play with. But Ziggy essentially vetoed that. So I'm going to stay at the cornerback position, and I'm going to go with Jahdae Barron out of Texas. Another cornerback who's been had a great season last year for a team that made the college football playoff. I think that building up that secondary, as I was saying before, is going to be critical for the Vikings going against Jordan Love, going against Caleb Williams and Jared Goff and the receivers in the NFC North. I love this quote here on Jahdae Davis from an SEC offensive coordinator. Terrific ball skills and feel. Football IQ is really high. Able to adjust and trigger. It's an elite. His footwork's clean. Excellent open field tackler. Best player on that team. 2024 Thorpe Award winner for best college football defensive back. I think that the more you watch Jahdae Barron, the better he looks. And there's someone that I would be comfortable with the Vikings taking there. What do you guys feel about Jahdae Barron? Is that an okay selection?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking on that same cornerback wavelength. Who's that corner out of Florida State?
Azariah Thomas.
I mean, he's like 6'2", like 200 pounds.
Yeah, 6'2", 200.
And has the size to lock up these bigger receivers. Like, he's physical. I think he's one of the better corner than
Jahdae Barron.
Yeah, that's who I would go for.
Ziggy, were you okay with this?
Jack, you're not thinking big enough. Now, I don't mind taking corner. I understand taking corner. I think it's a position the Vikings can improve at.
So you want Travis Hunter?
I want a big boy. I want a player that's over 300 pounds. The player I'm hoping falls to the Minnesota Vikings, because I think everybody has forgotten just how good this guy is Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. The way people talk about him, you'd think he's just like some big fat nose tackle that can take up space. And honestly, for the Minnesota Vikings, that would be an improvement if he can do that consistently.
Casey Hampton.
But the play that always sticks out in my mind, Paul, you remember Michigan's national championship, like that semifinal against Penn State, right?
Yes.
Not a semifinal, but yeah. When he was facing Allen out of the backfield and just sprinted him down. This is a guy who at the interior defensive line, he hasn't shown as a perfect pass rusher, but he can be fast. He can be athletic. He can be athletic even when he's 340, 350 pounds. He's got the technique. I think people have forgotten about this guy. And I think when he gets to the NFL, teams are going to be kicking themselves for not taking the obvious athletic freak, productive pass rusher, elite run stopper in the interior defensive line.
Look, the Vikings
and I would love to see that for the Vikings. And let's not forget, he is an incredible field goal kick blocker too. We could use one of those.
We've been searching for a young elite interior defensive lineman for a long time now. The Vikings just haven't had that for quite some time. So again, this is part of the advantage of being able to pick wherever you want. Like, yeah, they could go interior D-line. They could go cornerback. They can even go, who was I looking at before? They could even go safety if they want to. I know you talked me off of Malachi Starks. You talked me off of him with the Lewis Cine thing. Do you remember that from a couple episodes ago?
I mean, a lot of people are projecting who's out of South Carolina, like
Nick Emanwari. Yeah, Nick Emanwari. He's 6'3", like 220-ish or so. There's been Kyle Hamilton-esque comparisons. A good friend of the show, Kyle Hamilton. But the thing is, though, when you hear that, you get excited because this guy's, I think he ran a 4.38, like tests off the chart, 10 out of 10 on the RAS rankings. So he's a freak athlete, and he's someone that can probably be used as a chess piece all over the football field. But it's still like that. That's one where if they take him, I'll talk myself into it. But I'd rather address more important positions of corner or line.
Kyle Hamilton wasn't good enough to play in the SEC like this guy, and still made the Raiders. So I mean, he could be something special. This guy would have feasted Notre Dame if he played there.
Would you?
I don't know if Kyle sees the field of South Carolina.
Ziggy, South Carolina. Didn't we beat South Carolina that year?
Yeah,
in the bowl game. Yeah, South Carolina.
Yeah, they were killing you. Then
but they lost.
Then they just really
they lost the game.
They're like, this is like a bowl game, whatever.
Ziggy, if the Vikings got interested in a receiver, would you be disappointed if we went with a receiver who fell?
I think receivers are incredibly valuable. And ultimately, I mean, at a certain point, the Vikings are going to have to pay the Pied Piper. You just can't have and I think it's going to be difficult for us to have two highly paid receivers. Mm-hmm. So I'm not necessarily expecting us to be able to keep elite talent around Justin Jefferson unless it's on rookie contracts. I would be very surprised if we took a receiver, but say like Igbuka out of Ohio State is around and we're able to take him. I wouldn't hate that pick.
That's again going back to that versatility that the Vikings have in this draft. It's nice because you can just probably take best player available. If there's someone who you love on your draft board, the Vikings should feel comfortable to have the freedom of saying, yeah, let's grab a Mecca Ibuka.
Is Jordan Addison going to sign for a whole lot less than T. Higgins did this year? I don't think so.
And would you want to pay Jordan Addison that? I don't know yet. I still
like
need to
to
see.
Not. Here's the thing about managing a franchise. I don't want to be forced to pay Jordan Addison that money. I don't want to be in a position sort of like the Bengals were, where it's like if we let T. Higgins walk, we don't have any more elite talent in the room to replace him. It'll just be Jamar and Joe Burrow versus the world, so we sort of have to keep him around. I don't want to be in a position where the terms of the contract get negotiated to us by Jordan Addison. So I would not mind taking.
But we also need a third receiver. As much as we like Jalen Naylor and your guy Rondale Moore, as much as we like them,
Rondale Moore is no longer my guy. He lost that right when he was a total bust.
Now too with JJ McCarthy, I feel like you can't have enough weapons to help the kid out. I mean, he hasn't taken a snap the NFL yet. Let's say you come into this year with Addison, Jefferson, and Ibuka. That's easier on his life.
Oh my gosh! And then you have Hawkinson and Aaron Jones.
I mean, I'd rather go defensive side of the ball. Like I'd rather take a corner. But I don't think it's a bad pick.
My dream for so I'd be fine with offensive line. I'd be fine with receiver. I really would be fine anywhere across the board. But my dream for the Vikings, like I would love if he's never going to fall. But like Jalen Walker out of Georgia, I remember watching that playoff game with Notre Dame, and you just watch some dudes on the field and they're different. I've wanted a freak linebacker. The Vikings have a good linebacking unit. Right, with Ivan Pace, with Blake Cashman. Depends what you think of, Van Ginkel and Turner, like if linebacker / edge rusher. I think they're more of pass rushers.
What was that? I was getting so happy when we bring up Van Ginkel.
Oh, Van Ginkel's the best. He's a beast.
The gang.
I would love a freak
Somebody ran the
linebacker.
gangster.
Yeah, a freak linebacker would be great. But to me, if it's not corner, I'll be a little bummed out. But the Vikings have swung and missed on so many cornerbacks. Like it's crazy how we just can't draft them. So I'd like to say cornerback's the position I want. And if Will Johnson falls, I'll be very pumped. If Jahdae Barron's the pick, I'll be pumped. But we've just had a lot of failure at that position for like 10 years, it feels like. I just want playmakers. I want whoever it is to be the best player on the board. Ziggy, you looked like you were ready to jump in.
I mean, look, why don't you just? Yeah, I mean, why don't the Vikings just take the good players? Are they stupid?
Well, I think it's
the guys
pretty
who are good.
obvious. Yeah, I think that a lot of times we get so caught up in the test results and all this bullshit. We just watch the games and who's a beast on the field.
Yeah, people talk about like team needs and stuff too, but what if every team just drafted the best player available?
If every team just followed the like nerds online and their consensus boards, they'd actually be better at drafting. This is just true.
I feel like it probably is true, right?
I don't know. I don't
like
know.
just draft the biggest freak on the board.
Well, there's a difference between biggest freak and best player. Like Shamar Stewart is a freak athlete, but
He may become the best player.
Yeah, he
This
might.
thing is drafting for athleticism, drafting for college production. If teams could actually figure it out, like if there was a team that could actually consistently predict who the good players were, they'd go to the Super Bowl every single year.
well, I think that we were just talking about him. I think Kyle Hamilton was a prime example of someone who got totally caught up in the whole metric system and testing scores. Like he had a slower 40-yard dash.
Well, he was trapped in Europe.
What, Kyle? No,
You said he's got him in the metrics.
sorry, the metrics. I'm sorry. I meant like the measurements and the combine. But Kyle, he ran like in the 4.5s, and I remember at one point he was being mocked number 2 overall, and I was listening to Lions podcast saying this would be the end of the world. That was almost the quote. This would be the end of the world if we took Hamilton here. He's slow. He can't play. I was like, what? Like most of the people who talk about
There's no
these
SEC
things,
speed there.
this is what's shocking. But most of the people who are talking about these things truly don't watch any of these guys. And a huge advantage in this industry is for people who watch the games. And if you watch Kyle Hamilton play, if you watch some of these dudes that go out there, they're beasts.
You're making it sound like the scouts on the Vikings just don't watch football.
Well, look, dude.
But no, like
If you want to make it about the Lewis scene, Kyle, we don't have to get into that. Everyone knows how I feel about that.
Paul, you are right in the sense that a lot of these, like with these tests and stuff, and a lot of these numbers and these metrics and everything that's thrown out there, I feel like those guys don't watch as much college football as like I do.
Well, what do you mean? Like scouts?
No, like the
Or you mean like
I mean just
podcast
like
hosts?
in terms of just go turning the TV on a Saturday and watching this guy play every week and just knowing this guy is a fantastic.
Yeah, who are you saying doesn't watch?
Just no, not scouts.
I'm saying like a random podcast
everything I see
host.
online where it's like,
yeah. You just mean like journalists.
Yeah. I guess
Jack is
journalists.
calling out the journalistic integrity of the media right now.
I mean, I think a lot of them just will not know who a guy is and look at his 40 time. And having not watched him.
NFL scouts do that too. 40 time correlates enormously to draft position and not at all to NFL success.
Yeah, to me, it's if you're watching dudes on the field, there are some guys like Tyrann Mathieu falling. That's another one that I brought up on the show before. What did he fall to? The 3rd round. Like you watch them play, and it's like, gosh, it'd be shocking if this didn't translate over. There are certain guys like Manti Te'o was a Heisman finalist, but and he didn't pan out in the NFL. I'm not just saying if you're great in college, you're automatically a great player, but there are certain
it's not like
dudes.
Manti Te'o was garbage in the NFL.
No, he wasn't. But there are certain dudes that you watch them and you just say, okay, like this is clearly a guy who's ready for the next level. And a lot of times I feel like there's a player or two, not every draft, but it feels like often there's a player or two who starts sliding and it just doesn't really make sense why.
I watched Shamar Stewart before he transferred to A&M. He was playing at Marist, my alma mater. and I woke up on a Saturday
serious?
morning. Yeah, woke up on a
Oh,
Saturday
you didn't
morning.
know this?
Woke up to watch this dude play against like Jacksonville, and I'm like, who's this guy Shamar Stewart we have on our team,
Why is he here? It's like Piano Man.
and why is he here? And then he went to A&M.
You were like Piano Man. Remember the line when it's like they sit at the bar and put bread in my jar and say, "Man, what are you doing here?"
Yes,
What's Billy
People are
Joel
going to
doing?
think we're serious about this.
I know.
What's Billy Joel doing?
He didn't go to Marist.
Yeah. No, I
Should we reward Packers fans by talking about their team?
All
They've
right,
sat
let's
through
get
this?
into the Green Bay Packers.
Fajitas at home waiting for me.
So look, I don't understand Packers fans, but here's what I've been hearing from Packers fans all over. We are tired of drafting players that don't have big time college production. We don't care about potential. We don't care about athletic ability. All we care about is what you've produced in college. And if that's where you're at, former University of Virginia player Mike Green is exactly the guy you want, right? When it was at UVA, didn't get any playing time because our coaching staff is dramatically incompetent. Goes over to Marshall, immediately records 17 sacks, 81 tackles, and forces 3 fumbles.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy that you should want to pick if that's what you're after. The problem is picking the player of the most sacks in college is not how you get the best player on your team. A lot of Packers fans are going to want to take Benjamin Morrison too. I hear people saying he'd be like a top 10 pick if it weren't for the injury. If that were true, he'd be a lot closer to a top 10 pick. I think he could be a good player, but I'm not sure that he's the guy the Packers need to take. I think especially if they keep Jair, the cornerback room could be all right. If I'm the Green Bay Packers, I don't know. I've said this so many times on this show. I think the guys you should be targeting in the draft still, I think they're still undervalued, are athletic guys that can play interior defensive line. And I'm going to make a change here. I know before the show I said Derek Harmon was going to be the guy. Jack has rubbed off on me a little bit. And I've realized the magic of playing at Ole Miss. So the player I want the Packers taking this year, or that I don't want the Packers taking this year, who fits with their MO. He's athletic. He went to the Senior Bowl. He did well at the Senior Bowl. Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. Look, he was productive. I'm not saying he wasn't as productive, like he didn't have 17 sacks in a year, but he was good the whole time he was there. He has incredible lateral agility at his size, which is the single most important thing when you're evaluating how good a pass rusher can be. He can play anywhere on the offensive or defensive line. He's natural. He's got great processing skills. He's got all of the sort of moves you want to see out of a pass rusher. I get that he doesn't have the arms. I get that you want to see him play a little bit better. But I think overall, this is a guy who, closing in on the end of the first round, I think could be both an immediate impact player, not based off his college production, but based on who he is. They could become versatile for a team that at some point or another is going to need to replace some people on the defensive line.
I mean, yeah, I do love the Rebs, and this guy is a beast. Texas A&M transfer, but had to leave there because it was he was taking a back seat to my boy Shamar Stewart, but not a bad pick. Like, yeah, I'm an Ole Miss Rebel guy, probably my favorite team in college football.
Jeff Hafley loves to move guys around the defensive line, right? If he's taking a guy in the draft, it's going to be someone who you can shift to put him into favorable matchups every single play. I think Nolan's going to be that guy, especially with a year or two to develop.
This Ole Miss defense recently has been very, very, very good, very improved. Like, we're used to them seeing them score 50 points a game, their defense allowing 40 points. This Ole Miss defense has become very good as well, and he's been a huge, huge reason why.
It's a lot of fun thinking about the Packers pick. I've had a really great time trying to find the prospects here because Ziggy, Walter Nolan's again a great prospect, but it feels like their needs, right? Edge rusher and cornerback are the two ones that are blinking lights to me. There are so many guys that in this draft, after you get out of that like top 5 to top 7 where we think we know the picks, there are so many dudes who could go anywhere from 8 all the way down to the Packers in the early 20s. So like, which one of those dudes is going to actually fall down? Walter Nolan could be one of them. Your guy Shamar Stewart could be one of them. He could be on the board when the Packers are picking. I think Will Johnson's another player here. I think the Vikings and Packers are both keyed in on cornerback as one of their picks. So if Will Johnson's falling, Could we potentially see maybe even a move up? These teams don't like to do that, the Vikings and Packers, but maybe there's a move up trying to jump each other. I like it.
Yeah. I'll say this about the Packers too. I know a lot of people have them profiled on edge, but the thing is it's not as if they don't have functional players. Lucas Van Ness, I think he's a functional player, even though he's been a little bit disappointing. Rashawn Gary, like they've got players who can play on the edge. I think if you can improve the interior substantially and get those guys consistently into one-on-one matchups, they will have much better years.
Well, that's another thing that's interesting to me about the Packers is you're just begging for Van Ness or for Kingsley Enagbare. You're just begging for one of them to take that leap, and I think it's a little more unlikely than likely that it'll happen at this point. But TJ Slayton left, so there is a need at defensive tackle. Along that whole line, you could use some depth, and you could really use a stud, honestly, coming out. So, if you had gone with any of those picks along the D line, I'd nod my head and say, "Yep, that's totally fine to me." I also think that corner is a position that they're going to have to look out for, and we'll see what happens with Jair. If Jair's gone, then I think it might even be the number one need in Green Bay. Most people would say edge rusher. I think I'd put cornerback if Jair's gone. If he's there, you can afford to look elsewhere. How about receiver?
I was just going to say, you can't spend your first round pick in the NFL trying to fulfill a need. You've got to pick the player who you think is going to be the best producer for you over 5 years.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Like I think 5 years, like your first round draft pick, if things go well, will be on your team on their contract or 5th year option for 5 years. You can't over focus on year one, and teams can totally transform over the course of just 2 or 3 years. Don't reach just because you need a guy to position.
Yeah, no.
The 3rd and 4th round are for.
No, 100%.
I also do feel like too, like this guy is a beast. This guy's going to be very good.
No one?
And I feel like you can't have enough of those guys.
Oh, look at the Eagles
up front there. Like, yeah, exactly.
Look at the Eagles.
Wait, when you can rotate them, keep them fresh, make sure that a guy's always in running at full speed. Because this is Nolan's biggest problem is when Ole Miss asked him to play too many snaps, he slowed down. Because that's just how it is for big guys. When you can keep them going.
Look at who they're competing with. What Detroit loves to do is they want to play their big boy football. They want to have the biggest, toughest, strongest O-line and ideally run the football. And they swept Green Bay last year. I think the best way to counter that is let's get them in the trenches.
Oh yeah, you got look at the Vikings this whole offseason, right? I think that their moves were clearly assigned to counter Philadelphia and Detroit.
Which is what you have to do.
You have to shore up the lines. So yeah, Ziggy, I think it's a great point. If the Packers went receiver, which they never do, but let's say Emeka Ibuka's on the board, or who's Burden, right? Luther Burden from Missouri. I know
Matthew Golden out of
Matthew
Texas
Golden.
Is a player I've seen people talking
Matthew
about.
Golden's been there. Isaiah Bond will probably fall a little further, but like let's say one of those dudes is there, or Tet McMillan falls. I think that's a possibility as well. If one of those receivers is on the board, and at least one of them will be, do you think that draws any interest from LaFleur and Gutekunst?
I think it draws interest, but at a certain point, you have to trust organizational history. The Packers have not shown any urgency in addressing the wide receiver situation. I don't think that's going to change this offseason.
I really do think that in terms of the Packers offensively, it's totally Jordan Love. Like, I think the receivers that he has currently are decent enough where it's all on his shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he plays well, if he plays what he's being paid to play like, it doesn't make a difference whether you draft a receiver or you have your current assets. I'd go defensive side of the ball for Green Bay.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that point, Jack. If Jordan Love is lights out, you can make do with who they have. Maybe at a small improvement the trade deadline. If Jordan Love is not lights out, you're not beating the Eagles or the Lions.
Regardless, even with...
And you could probably, even in the second, like later in the draft, you could also try and nab a receiver. I don't know if any of those guys stand out enough where, to me, they do need help at some of these.
There's always positions. Playable receivers to be found in the second, third, fourth round. The Packers don't need a star; they need a player who can catch the ball.
I mean, look at the guys on the Packers right now: Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson. These are not first round picks here.
No, and they're all solid receivers.
But again, that's to counter it, you could say, what are the Packers desperately trying to find an alpha receiver? So
I think it's Jordan Love.
I know.
I don't
I'm
think the alpha receiver's there for them. 23. You're not getting Jamar Chase.
I agree. I was, as we were talking there, I was looking at Mykel Williams. I know that he's been mocked anywhere from like 10 to 20 as well. If he slips, that's another guy. There are so many dudes that you can look at. But I would, if I'm a Packer fan, I'm hoping for hitting that defensive line. But it's always exciting when you draft a receiver. Like if they drafted Emeka Ibuka, you would get excited. Yeah, you would get excited.
You'd get excited, yeah.
So it's another one of these positions where you really can't go wrong. It's just kind of finding who the right guy is. So Walter Nolan, the pick for Ziggy for the Green Bay Packers here. That'll bring it to me to wrap it up with the Detroit Lions. The defending NFC North champions, the 1 seed in the NFC before the loss to the Commanders in the divisional round of the playoffs. Did you have a bet on Detroit that day? Didn't you and our friend Mike? Didn't you guys have a bet on Detroit?
We had the first half over.
You had the over. Yes, that was right. I remember you guys were watching that game, and Jaden Daniels was running up and down the field. You're like, the Commanders are going to hit it by themselves.
I mean, it shattered. They scored like 40-some points in the first quarter.
So when I look at needs for Detroit heading into this year,
I need you.
Another team, the NFC North. What do these teams need? They want edge rushers. The Lions, with Aiden Hutchinson coming back, that's great. But how much do you really trust Josh Pascal and Marcus Davenport as your second guy? I don't think the answer is a lot. So you want to upgrade that position. I know Zadarius Smith is someone that they're considering bringing back. They just can't afford him right now. Apparently those two sides are still in contact. So you want to improve the edge rushers. At guard, Kevin Ziegler goes to the Titans. They have Mahogany, who came in a second-year, 6th-round pick, who played last year and he showed signs of being a capable starter, but you're not positive with what you have there. And then Graham Glasgow had a down year as well, playing at left guard. So that guard position's another spot where we know how important the offensive line is in Detroit. That's something that they want to continue to build. It's never bad to have depth along the O-line. So I have my attention there. And then I'm also looking to a degree basically everywhere on defense, honestly. But the defensive tackle after DJ Reader and Ali McNeil, they do have some depth, but a lot of those guys coming off injury, a lot of those guys coming off seasons, torn ACLs for a couple of them. So I have my eyes on those positions for the Lions right now. As far as draft day targets go, I've been seeing James Pierce out of Tennessee being a popular pick mocked to Detroit. And when you look at him, ran a 4.47, 2-time first team All SEC, leads the conference in tackles for loss and QB pressures over the last 2 years, 17.5 sacks over the last 2 years. Everything you read about him, and when you look at the numbers, it looks great. But then you hear people talk about James Pierce, and what do they say? Here are the quotes. He's got great get off, but I think he's one-dimensional. We felt like we could neutralize him with some chips and take him out. Wants no part of setting the edge and stopping the run. That doesn't sound like a Detroit Lion to me.
Not a Dan
So
Campbell
he's off my board for the Detroit Lions. James Pierce, off the board. I'm actually looking, I know Jack is over here on this Shamar Stewart praising tour, but I'm saying, what about Nick Skirton?
I don't know if I'd say praising tour. I think he's a very good player.
I don't know. Did anyone? I felt like the Shamar Stewart.
I felt like I was being taken around the country with how much Jack was praising.
I felt like
you can fill a whole hot air balloon with what Jack said.
I guess it is a praising tour.
Yeah, Jack said no help. I'm looking at Nick Skirton, who some people think is the better player at Texas A&M last season, and I see a guy with only 5 sacks, but was quite disruptive. Power. This is a guy like motor. I mean, that feels more Detroit Lions-esque than James Pierce here, and it's the alma mater of Dan Campbell too. Led the Big Ten in sacks when he played at Purdue. He was a captain at 19 years old before coming over to Texas A&M. I think this guy, all SEC honors, 14 tackles for loss. I like this guy. I like Nick Skirton. Building up the lines in Detroit and giving Aiden Hutchinson a running mate along that defense.
He's only a name because Shamar is being triple teamed. I mean, Shamar is opening up holes for this guy left and right. Was that they have Christian Mahogany, right? The lineman.
Yeah.
That's the Christian. He. I played pong with him.
Where?
He played football at Boston College. I think he's a couple years younger than us, and he was friends with a few kids I knew at Marist, and so he came to visit them, and we had like a pregame at my friend's place, and I was playing with Mahogany, and I was talking about I'm like, you play at BC? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, like that's awesome.
Now he's with the Detroit
And I
Lions.
was with Detroit, yeah. So he was my pong partner. We went like 0-3 that night, though. He wasn't that good.
That could be a problem.
But
maybe I'm changing my pick to guard. What do you think of that pick, Ziggy? Acceptable?
If there were a guard that I thought really fit with the Lions, that's where I would go. I think people are going to talk. You're going to hear a lot of Tyler Booker to the Lions. Have you heard this at all?
I haven't seen Booker to the Lions.
I think you are going to start hearing that because people are going to hype this guy up as the guy who can come in and fit with the Lions. I don't think that's going to be a good pick at all. I don't think the Lions are going to do it. He's bad in run blocking despite his size, and he's horrendous in second level run blocking. And when you've got Jahmyr Gibbs, you want a guard that can win at both levels. You can take down the first guy, get up, and make a second block for you. Like, so Jahmyr Gibbs, if you have a guy who can do that, that's probably a touchdown. So I don't mind solidifying the defensive line at all. I think the offensive line will probably be able to work. So I'm interested. I don't exactly know what the Lions offense is going to look like next year with Ben Johnson leaving. Obviously, Dan Campbell plays a big role. People underrate that. But I could definitely see things changing at least a little bit with him out. I think what you said makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't be shocked, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everybody's acting like the Lions offense is locked up. I would not be shocked if one of those receivers falls to see the Lions take them.
Yeah, that's
Amon-Ra
interesting.
St. Brown is an incredible player. But I really think J-Mo, as good a player as he is really a third option stretching downfield who makes a couple big plays a game. I think a possession receiver could make a lot of sense for the Lions.
Yeah, the Lions kind of do lack a true number 2, don't they?
Well, it depends. I think a lot of people feel comfortable. Lions fans will probably say they feel comfortable with Jameson Williams as the 2.
I think Jameson Williams could really be unlocked if he weren't asked to be the number 2.
Like, he'd be great as like a deep ball threat as a third option.
So Ibuka is someone who you think would be perfect for them.
Yeah, I really think so. I mean, Jameson Williams, you want him catching balls that are 20 plus yards down the field. You don't want him in short range. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a nightmare. He takes half of the field for you. I love Ibuka to slot in there.
I mean, even so, I don't hate that. Everybody last year was riding Detroit's defense and fair, but they were all hurt. Like, I know, like Washington scored 45 points in that playoff game.
Yeah, the defense will be substantially better next year.
I also don't think Jared Goff wasn't great in that game either. Like, we saw the Lions offense take their hits as well.
Whoa, careful. Don't slander Jared Goff.
Oh, I'm not. Jared Goff's great, but I don't think he was fantastic in that game.
No, he's bad.
Yeah, he was bad. I mean,
I don't care if you have Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. You'd rather have good receivers around them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, who was I just going to say?
I don't mind that.
I was looking over at who was I looking at? I had someone pulled up here that I wanted to mention.
Even that game 2 against Minnesota, I feel like that was more so the Lions defense just making Darnold's life hell. Like the Lions.
Our offensive line was horrible, and they had the game of their lives.
I don't think was the Lions offense. Did they kill you guys? I thought it was just a defensive.
No. Remember we kept having we kept intercepting the ball, run to the 5-yard line.
Yeah,
then they would stand.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, the Lions.
That was horrible. Oh, here he is. Okay.
With people talking about how bad the Lions defense was because of injuries, I don't really.
That was a Dan Campbell game of Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I don't think
they came out and beat the crap out of us.
I don't think that they're seeing that this Lions offense could also improve with a receiver like that. I don't hate it in a Ibuka
dude.
pick.
If the Lions offense improves from what it was last year, it's going to be a nightmare. And then that's the scary part. Is that they really can.
There?
But I don't know. They also need. They kind of need an X receiver too.
Is there just too much?
Like Tim Patrick's there, but how much is Tim Patrick going to give you after 2 ACL injuries back-to-back years? Like, Ibuka will be very good. I think if he fell there, they would be happy. But I just look at that D line, and with all the injury, Marcus Davenport's coming off injury, Reader's coming off injury, McNeil's coming off. They're all coming off injury. So it should. You should have better injury luck, but at the same time, it's like you saw what happened to him when all those guys went down. Might not be the worst thing in the world to build there. One other guy I want to mention, who I doubt will be there, but you're seeing him slide all over the draft board. Originally thought to be a surefire top 5 prospect, I'd say. And now I've seen him go in drafts to 30, 31, 32. If Kelvin Banks falls and the Lions have an opportunity to take him they are at 30, correct? They're at 28. They're at 28. If Kelvin Banks slides, man, that would be a scary pick. That would be one of those picks where I sit back and I go, are you kidding me? Like, are you effing kidding me that the Lions are able to get a prospect like this late in the first round? A top 5 potential. Dude is supposed to be awesome. And he just had a little bit of a down year. And you're seeing...
He had the best year of his career.
But from what people wanted from him, why is he sliding?
It's not totally clear to me why he's sliding. I mean, I think really the reason he's sliding is because people realize he's 6'4" with short arms. Like, he doesn't have the size you want, and I don't think there's enough there to be convinced that he can overcome it. Obviously, he's extremely quick, but when you're facing Myles Garrett or Aiden Hutchinson or Zadarius, like any of the guys you got to play, I was going to say Zadarius Smith, like it was 2018, like Max Crosby. It's not enough to be fast.
You can also throw him in at guard if need be. And that's why if the Lions...
You don't want to be spending a top 10, top 15 pick on guard.
Yeah, but a guard...
Which is why he would be great to the Lions.
Well, he's someone that you could... I think that the versatility of Kelvin Banks is awesome as well. Like, it's great to have guys who can play anywhere.
What is he, 330 pounds?
He's 6'5", 315.
I mean, that's a big boy. Yeah.
He's got decent he's got decent agility numbers, which is all I care about.
Like, he can also move decently for being that big.
I don't think he'll be there at 28. I think he's going to go in the top 20. I'd be really surprised if he didn't. But the more you look at mock drafts, the more you're like, there's a world where he could fall. I mean, if the Vikings took Kelvin Banks, I'd be pumped up. Anytime that he could be that guy I was talking about, where you watch him and you go, damn, that guy's really good at football. But he starts sliding down the board. And eventually, like, the Eagles will take him. Like, if he goes to the Eagles, I'm going to be like, are you kidding me?
He's such a Detroit Lion, too. Like, what they like to do with those guys up front. I mean, that would be...
That's one I have that circled as a, like, I hope that doesn't happen.
What if the Lions just don't make a pick and Campbell comes out and says, we're good. We don't need anybody else. What would you do? Would you be like,
I'd laugh.
I'd be so happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be happy. There would be a piece of me, like, that's so insane that there's a piece of me that would be like damn. Like, all right.
I think I might be like, this guy is the greatest ever.
Yeah,
I mean, the locker room would go crazy, right?
Like, there could be No, I think the locker room would say, what the hell's wrong with this guy? But I think they're like...
they'd go crazy.
Yeah, oh yeah. As a fan of an opposing team, there would be 0.1% of me that was like, no shit. like there's that would be a powerful that'd be a powerful move, but the other 99.9% of me would be like, oh, what an idiot. What a lunatic.
We're gonna forego our pick. We're good
is fine is crazy. But yeah, I think the Lions, again, kind of revisiting what I was saying earlier in the show. It's fun with the NFC North for all these teams because really there are so many options. It feels like normally you're a little more inclined to take one or two positions. But this year, with the way that our division is looking, all these teams should be really good, and it's fun to be in a position where if someone falls, it feels great to take the best player available.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, it's not fun to be in this division. I want to be in the NFC South.
Oh yeah, it would be great to be in the I was talking to my dad about the schedule for the NFC North this year, and I think we're who are we playing again? We have the AFC West, right? No, we don't have the West. Who do we have?
Oh, the AFC West sucks.
No, who do we have? Besides we have the AFC North. Yeah, we had the AFC North and the NFC East.
Oh, we're playing you guys this year?
Yeah.
Is that in Pittsburgh?
I think it's in Minnesota.
Oh, you're going to beat us.
Yeah. Whoever's at home wins that match.
Yeah.
No, but it's if you look at strength of schedule based on wins last year, the NFC North teams have the 4 of the 5 hardest schedules. In
the it's a brutal schedule. And I was telling my dad,
the only team with a harder schedule is the New York Giants.
That's just so fit.
You have to go against the. Well, that's because the Giants have to go against the North and their own and the East.
Or are they going to be 2-15?
But yeah, my dad was like, wait a second, we can't just play the AFC South again. That maybe we haven't talked about this, but that could be something to watch out for. With everyone talking about how good the NFC North teams are going to be, we are forgetting that last year weak schedule, and this year it should come back. I mean, that's the parity of the NFL.
Yeah, well, you'll get to find out what these teams are a little bit more in the regular season. I don't think they were as bad as the playoff performances suggested, but
they're also.
I'd like to see something in the regular season.
I would be really surprised to see 2 14+ wins.
That's not going to happen.
Like that will not happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
I actually think the division winner will probably come in at 11 wins this year in the NFC North, which, given where we were last year, third place team had 11 wins. It's kind of crazy. But all right, there you go. The draft targets for the NFC North. Nice job, guys. We'll be back next week with, I'm sure, more draft content as we get closer and closer. We'll see you then.